Mam Keys in Duguangu. And I first would like to welcome you all to a new portion of the frequency called Challenge and Response. And I recently thought of doing something like this because, in my opinion, a forum of this type is extremely necessary in altering and, changing for the better the way not only that we think of ourselves, but the way that we think about one another and the way we treat one another and act toward each other as Bantu Congo people. And it is more so of, if you're familiar with the challenge response type of, whether we're talking about discourse or we're talking about forums or whatnot, this is more so a challenge to yourself. And although, of course, I would, always appreciate feedback, responses and whatnot, I'm doing this more so you can challenge yourself in the way that you may think. If you have your own set way, if you have your own way of looking at things and your own perspective, not saying that anything is wrong with that, but we sometimes have to challenge ourselves to find a clearer, more beneficial, proper perspective to help get not only ourselves ahead, but each other as Bantu Congo people. So these will be fairly brief, but I will try to dig as deeply as I possibly can into the subconscious, the unconscious ways that we think. And the most important thing, because in doing these, not only on the frequency, but just what I do on a daily basis, I run into a lot of our people who strongly defend as what we call the Babel. And a lot of people remain unconscious of the realities behind these so-called, what I like to call, religions. So I'm not going to get too in-depth with that because I do so on other videos. But what I want to do here is to challenge the way you think because of your religion. I want to challenge the way that you see certain things in life, because many things, and many people don't realize this, but many things in life, in many ways that we think, are based off of people's views of their religion and their doctrines. And specifically right here, which is not new to anyone, and this is what the title is speaking about, Purely Black, because even when we do our studies of our ancient people in Chikoma and other parts of Kukongo, other parts of the world actually, we look at the color white as to represent purity. And this is pretty much the set standard of way of thinking. Look in the dictionary. I don't even have to go through necessarily all the differences between black and white in the dictionaries throughout Earth Mother. Black would be defined as evil or soot or depressing, guilt, all those types of things, sinful, dirty, the list goes on. Whereas white is, of course, the diametric opposite, and that would mean purity, that would mean clean, that would mean heavenly, it would mean saintly, snow, whatever else you want to call it. So I'm challenging the way that we think about black versus white. And yes, I do mean that in a skin color way, because a lot of this is based off of skin color for hatred toward our people in the past. But I'm also challenging the entire way in everything that we view as white being pure. So what I want to say first is that this is not necessarily the challenge, but I'm going to test you. And a lot of people have seen me do this, but I want to test you on something. Because many of us speak from an African-centered consciousness, as I like to call an Afro-consciousness. But if we do that, do we fully deep down inside do that within ourselves? And the test for that is close your eyes and imagine two figures, One figure is representative of Jesus and the other one of Satan. And you can't see the faces. All you can see are the figures. And one has on a white robe with a gold belt, and one has on a black robe with a red belt. And right now, tell yourself, first thought, which one is Jesus? Which one is Satan? See, this is what I mean when I say challenge ourselves, because even those of us who are in the African perspective, Afro-consciousness, you close your eyes, you still see a white Jesus. And that's perfectly fine because Jesus is the European deity anyway. But a lot of people still relate him or that character, that mythology, with purity. So we have to show that this was done deliberately during the Ma'afa, first off, not only of our people here in the United States and other parts of the Americas, but in our own homeland right now in Kukongo. And, you know, an example of that is in the Sudan, where many of our people are divided because of this nonsense. And it's all over the entire continent, divided because of this nonsense. And if you think about it, it's really a paradox because the way that we think about the surface, you know, describing, you know, skin color and things like that, the way that we think on the surface is because of the way that we think deep down, the unconscious and subconscious. But our unconscious and subconscious have been shaped according to what we've been taught about the surface. So my challenge for you is, can you view unconsciously, not making yourself do so, but can you rewire your unconscious and subconscious to view black as pure rather than white? See, the reason why I say that is because we have to change our method of thinking. See, our thinking is a product of our method of thinking. So our method of thinking is that pure must mean something without fault, without degradation, you know, all the other things that's supposed to mean pure. But if we really look at the way nature works, look at natural law, look at the way things are in reality, there is no possible way to get something from nothing. The only possible way is to get nothing from something. Now, why do I say that? Because if we look at black, black is the combination of all of the colors in the natural spectrum. It entails everything, every color imaginable, even the ones that we can't imagine, creates the color black, which means it starts off with everything. Which means, by contrast, white must be the opposite or complement, however you want to view it. But that means that it involves and it contains nothing. So purity is supposed to be in a state of natural serenity or natural form before anything was tarnished. Well, if we look at it by definition, that in itself would describe the color black. Because before anything was subtracted from the black, not just skin color, I'm not even talking about skin color here. I'm talking about the color black. Before anything was subtracted from black to create every other color in the spectrum, including white, there was only black. But from black, you get blue. You get the reds. You get the purples and indigos and all of these things. And if you take up all of these colors, take away all of these elements of the spectrum, then and only then do you get white. So white is not a pure natural state. White is the subtraction of everything from the pure natural state. Now, if you want, as again, I'm not necessarily directly relating that to the people right now, but there is some truth to that also. But I'm going deeper into the consciousness, as I said, because when we look at things, we look at somebody wearing a white robe and they look pure, they look clean, they look whatever. But if they had a black smudge on that robe, then it takes away from our view of what was making that robe pure. Do you understand? So the literal way that we think when we approach the color black is within our method of trying to describe the essence of black versus white. So can you challenge yourself deep down inside? I don't care what your denomination of anything is. Can you challenge yourself to where you close your eyes the first time and you do not think that that white robe represents what you said it did, and that black robe represents what you first said it did? Because bringing that back to us now, the way we view each other is the same way and is a byproduct of the way we view all things that are black. I even see my people going around saying that black means death because it comes from the word negro, which comes from the Greek word necro, which means death. But again, I don't care what word you put on it. Look at it as the color itself. Look at it what it's supposed to be. See, what our people said is that everything came from blackness. And they may have been saying that this is why we have black skin. Yes, beautiful. But our people took it much deeper than that. They were saying that we came from when everything was one. See, scientists will even tell you that everything was one and then the Big Bang came out. And then according to entropy, things got disordered over time. But before that Big Bang, to the scientists, there was still nothing but blackness. And then they tell you this: the energies that are closest to what the powerful energies were during the Big Bang are black holes. Do you understand? So if we look at even white, because people say white light means pure and whatnot. Well, you don't recognize white light without blackness from which it came. You see, you don't see blackness in the middle of a white light. You see a white light in the middle of blackness. So some may say, well, you wouldn't recognize that there's blackness if there wasn't whiteness. Overstood. But again, go back to the original essence of what creates blackness, and that is everything, all colors of the spectrum combined into one. So you cannot create black from white. You can only create white from black. Same thing anatomically. When we're dealing with our biological makeup, you cannot create black skin from purely white skin because the gene literally does not exist anymore. Only if that gene exists, and if I'm not mistaken, it's called the MC1R. Only if that gene exists within the person, no matter how many generations down the bloodline it goes, only then can there be a possibility of blackness into the skin. But if that gene does not exist within the person, they cannot create a black skinned person. But black skinned people can create albinos with no color. So we have to look at the order of the way nature works. We have to look at things that make sense and then challenge yourself. Because if you reverse everything in your consciousness, you will realize that the way that you view everything now is unnatural to natural order. And if you view everything in its out of order, unnatural order, then how can you possibly make order out of it if you do not change the way you think about it. Because simple things like this are very complicated, of course, but these little simple things are why we oftentimes are in the conditions that we are as Bantu Congo people. This simple thing right here is simply why we pit light versus dark. You see, so look at it, think about it, challenge yourself, see how you respond. And with that said, I appreciate you listening. I will have more of these coming up, but I feel like they're important and it's something that we should do. And not only do it yourself, challenge other people and see how they respond also. Ueso.